All right, now our featured speaker, and this is going to be inspirational. I've already seen a little bit about it. David Windecher is with us, and I want to welcome Sonny Deriso to the screen. Of course, Sonny is one of our past presidents and chairman of Atlanta Capital Bank, and just does so much for our club, our city, each of us individually. Sonny, I've loved seeing you on many Zoom calls, but I'm always glad to have you on our featured Rotary programs as well. So we turn it over to you.
Thank you, President Cannon. I appreciate that, and it's a pleasure to be with all of you today, and thank you for tuning in on this meeting. I want to tell you a little bit about our speaker before I give his formal introduction. I was introduced to David Windecher by Marion Bunch, who many of you know is a Rotarian. And Marion sent me a note some time ago and said, there's a fellow I want you to know that I've really gotten to know and admire, and I'm going to introduce you to him. And then I got a book in the mail from her, and it was actually David's autobiography. And it tells his story, some of which you'll hear today, about his life of crime, and then how he became a member of the bar and the wonderful things that he's doing now. And David is a great guy. I decided that I wanted to get to know him personally. I've spent a lot of time with him. I have a great admiration for him, and I'm so pleased to be able to introduce him to you today. He is a trailblazing orator, an author, and a lawyer in the growing movement to end the mass incarceration and to redress the racial inequity that's in our criminal justice system. He's an attorney that's licensed not only in Georgia, but also in Florida, and he has offices in Atlanta and Miami. He published this autobiography that I mentioned, and the title of it is The American Dream, The American Dream, His Story or History in the Making, which details the challenges of overcoming poverty and 13 arrests on his way to becoming a criminal defense lawyer. He is approved by the State Bar of Georgia as a continuing legal education instructor on the subject of record restrictions. He's a qualified expert witness on the topic of criminal street gangs. He's a recipient of the Georgia Trend and Atlanta Business Chronicle 40 Under 40 awards. He's a regular guest as a legal analyst on HLN and CNN, and he's a frequent keynote speaker. Most importantly, he's the founder of an organization entitled Rehabilitation Enables Dreams, also known as RED, which is a nonprofit restorative justice organization. Rotarian friends, it's my pleasure to introduce to you David Lee Windecher.
Sonny, I appreciate that kind introduction. You know, no matter how many times I hear that, it's a bit surreal to me that the life I'm leading today started where I'm about to share with all of you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for this opportunity. It's truly an honor to share my personal journey and my community work with you. Before I get started, I want to just take a moment to extend my gratitude to Sonny for extending this opportunity to me and for your friendship. It really, truly means a lot. I also want to thank Jens and Bill for helping coordinate, and President Buchanan for kicking us off. All right, let's dig in. So what is recidivism? Who does it impact? And why have I and my team been chosen to address this nationwide issue? I'll tell you why over the next few minutes. I'm going to share my journey with you of how I transitioned from a criminal defendant and gang member to sought after criminal defense attorney and leader within the criminal justice reform movement. You're going to hear about the life I led as a young man, the specific experiences that placed my life's trajectory pointing directly to a life in prison, and what I learned about our criminal justice system along the way that inspired me to dedicate my life to criminal justice reform. My journey to this point has been unconventional, to say the least. I was raised in Argentina. My family was extremely impoverished. We lived on a dirt road. Our house was made of exposed cinder blocks. The roof was a plastic sheet, and we had curtains for doors. I was the oldest of four, my father a blue-collar laborer, and my mother a homemaker. We lived check to check. We wore the same clothes every day. Our refrigerator was usually empty by Thursday. We didn't have much, but we had each other, and our home was filled with laughter and love. My parents did the best that they could to provide for us. My father worked tirelessly to save up enough money to move us to America to pursue the American dream. When we arrived in Miami, when I was 10 years old, we moved into what I was too young to realize was the hood. Our financial struggles continued, but poverty felt consequential in America. I could feel the difference, and I wasn't able to cope with it. So at the age of 11, I made my first bad decision, and I got arrested for stealing a set of $20 pegs that my brother and I needed to tow each other to and from school on our shared bicycle. Now, this was the 90s and the height of the Get Tough on Crime movement. A juvenile judge adjudicated me delinquent, put me on probation, ordered me to do community service, required that I attend theft deterrent programs, and had me check in with the court monthly. The devastating part is that it cost my parents money that they didn't have. The system didn't teach me to do better. It taught me to resent my life even more. It called me a defendant, a delinquent, a probationer, and at such an impressionable age, the weight of those words molded me. I became exactly what the system told me that I was. And that altered my life and opened the door to the darkest years of my journey. At the age of 13, I started middle school. I would regularly get jumped by black and brown kids while walking home from school because of my white skin. That same year, I witnessed a murder 10 feet away from me. So I asked to be initiated into a criminal street gang. I needed the protection, plus I knew the gang was making money and my family and I were in desperate need. My whole life changed. I was constantly running in the streets. At 16, against my parents' wishes, I dropped out of high school, and not because I wasn't interested in education, but because it wasn't helping us survive. And frankly, our compulsory education system was failing me. Their curriculum was outdated. In ninth grade, I was covering the same mathematics I had already learned in Argentina in fifth grade. They couldn't stimulate me, but they told me I was the problem. I dropped out and went deep into selling dope and gangbanging. I opened up a drive-through marijuana shop, sort of like Krispy Kreme, 24/7. We ran it like a corporation. We implemented business models that are successful practices for Fortune 500 companies today. We had employees, scheduled shifts, meetings, paydays, and the sort. We were also extorted by the local police. They took some of our profits in exchange for protection. We started making real money, and with that certainly comes enemies. In 1996, I was driving a 1994 Lincoln Town Car with custom rims and custom system. One morning I needed gas, so I pull up to the gas station. I leave the music blasting loud because I want to be intimidating. When I walk into the gas station, the music suddenly cuts off. And I'm wondering why, because the song I started was about 6 minutes long and we're 30 seconds in. I look outside the gas station and someone is ransacking in my vehicle. I step outside of the gas station and I hear an alert whistle coming from a car to the right. I look over and I identify the car as a rival gang member's car. You don't go to that car because that's how you get shot and killed. So I go to my car while the other individual runs towards the getaway car. I noticed in my car that my Motorola StarTAC phone with a leather case was missing, and there were several hundreds of dollars in there. The Alpine detachable face for my audio system was also missing, and I was angry. And in these neighborhoods, we have these cultures that if you don't administer some level of retribution, you're going to be considered soft, and this will happen to you on loop. So I called up my group, and I told them we needed to make an example of this individual. We're driving around for about 10, 12 hours. We can't find him. He's not home. During that time, we're smoking marijuana, drinking alcohol, and now it's about 9 o'clock at night when he's finally there. We get to his property. He comes outside wielding a firearm, and his sister, you could hear her begging with him to put the gun down and come back inside. He puts the gun down. When he finally puts it on the ground, I run up on him and I start hitting him. I'm so enraged and angered by the situation that I'm completely incoherent. And all I can hear is freeze, which is code word for run as fast as you can. So I'm booking it and I'm running towards the nearest park. I get to the park and I climb the highest tree. I'm sweating profusely. I could feel my heartbeat in my eardrums. And then I could hear the faint sound of a dog barking, and I had the wishful thinking of that maybe that's just someone that left their dog in the park. But the reality was this was the hounds that were coming for me. I needed to scale the tree down immediately. As soon as I hit the ground, I hear this loud noise like a washing machine overloaded, clunking, and a huge gust of wind and a tremendous light. I look up and the chopper is now looking for me. 16-year-old self is being sought after by a helicopter. So I freak out and I run as quickly as I can out of the park. And I can see the fence I need to hop over in order to get into the neighborhood and hide in the shadows of my community. Well, this is one of those fences that has a pole and then protrudes over. I throw my hand on the fence. I throw my body over, and unfortunately, I pierce my hand on that fence. Now, while I'm hanging there bleeding, and I say this with a disclaimer, I don't have disdain for law enforcement. I do have disdain for corrupt law enforcement. And my life up to that point had experiences that included police pulling me over, finding nothing on me, and just taking me in for a pointless charge. If you name it, I've been charged with it. Now, when they found drugs and money on me, they would take them from me and let me go and tell me it's my lucky day. Or they would take them from me, beat me up, and then drop me off in rival gang territory for me to walk home, possibly to get killed. So I knew that this is the one time that they could justifiably take my life. I ripped my hand off the fence. I go hide in the neighborhood, and I thought I got away. And you'll get a kick out of this. The following day, I knew I was going to get caught because there's bulletin boards everywhere, and it was so easy to identify. I had long red dreads, a mouthful of gold teeth, and you see how pale I am, so I'm like a shimmering ghost. You don't have to try to identify me. You just do it by accident. So I turn myself in. They bring me in front of a juvenile judge, and the prosecutor stands up and says that they object to my pretrial release because they believe that this matter is gang related. The victim is in the hospital in the ICU. This might be a homicide case. They don't know if he's going to survive. Public defender stands up and he says, look, this is a matter of self-defense, wrong place, wrong time. Mr. Windecher was robbed. He was trying to get his property back. And the prosecution had it at that point. They stand up and they said, we're going to go ahead and direct file Mr. Windecher. He's got 9 open cases. This court no longer should have jurisdiction. He should be charged as an adult. So they packaged me up from Little Juvenile Jail and they sent me over to the Miami-Dade County Pretrial Detention Center where my bond is denied and I'm held in custody awaiting trial as a 16-year-old incarcerated with grown men facing murder, rape, arson, truly violent charges. This experience, I experienced ungodly things. I can tell you, I've seen people get stabbed in the throat. I've seen grown men be raped. I've seen correction officers pound people to a pulp simply because they didn't respond to a demand quick enough. And this is where I learned you don't put young folks in jail with adults. It just promotes criminality. Well, my case is scheduled for trial on October 16th, and I get to trial on the outside. My right-hand man goes to see the state's material witness and says, hey, listen, you started this. If you decided you want to show up and testify, make sure you have a good breakfast because it'll be the last thing you do. Well, on the day of trial, the state's material witness does not show up. The state was on terms. And so luckily, I beat the case on the technicality. They had to dismiss the charges, but it didn't change the fact that my life was spiraling out of control. By the time I was 19, I'd been arrested 13 times. I spent 8 months incarcerated. I'd been shot, stabbed, and I was obviously headed for prison. It felt like once I was in the system, there was no way out of it. It started from not being able to get a job. And I'm talking about the types of jobs that 14, 15-year-olds get: retail, cashier, busboy, etc. No one would hire me because I had a criminal record starting at the age of 11, which is what our criminal justice system does to people that are going through the system. And that's why I started selling drugs. I wanted to make money to provide for myself and my family. I needed to make the money. The arrest ensued, of course: jail time, probation, new arrest, violation of probation, more jail time, more probation. It was a never-ending vicious cycle, and I wanted out, but I didn't know what the first step would be. Something had to change. Otherwise, I knew that my younger brother and sisters would follow in my footsteps. Well, suddenly God showed up. He put a woman named Nicole in my path. And Nicole was a year younger than I, but she was education-oriented. She was pleasant. She was kind. And her and I developed a romance. And one day we're having a conversation and she says, well, what do you want to do when you get older? And I told her, I said, I want to be a lawyer because I feel like the system is broken. I feel like I can do something with my experiences. I mean, by arrest 9, I'm firing my public defender and handling my own hearings. And I thought, my black and brown friends, they go to prison. when I go to jail. They go to jail when I go to probation. And it seems like there was some kind of assault on them, but I couldn't actually understand that at that age. I wasn't cognitively developed enough or emotionally intelligent to realize the racial thrust of our criminal justice system and why it was happening. So, I tell her I want to be a lawyer because I want to help with the system. And thinking that this conversation isn't going to go anywhere, I change the topic and I say, hey, well, what do you want to do when you get older? She says, I want to be a police officer, which I thought, well, this relationship is never going to work. And she stopped me in my tracks and said, well, how about this? I'll make you a deal. If you teach me all of the things that I cannot learn in college about our criminal justice system, if you teach me criminality, gangbanging, selling drugs, fraud, what police are doing behind the scenes to be involved in the crime, and all of these things that I cannot learn in college, I will tutor you to get your GED. I will help you get into college and do everything I can in my power to get you into law school. Well, I met her in November of 1997, and her promise was not idle. By March 10th of 1998, I sat for the GED exam, and I actually scored 155 out of 160 questions correct, which instilled hope in me. It made me feel like I could be a part of the system without being broken by my personal circumstances. So, one day Nicole calls me up and she says, hey, we're going to take the CPT test now. So we take the college placement test. And because I had dropped out, I was missing some foundational work. And that foundational work required me to do 2.5 years of provisional classes. Talk about dedication. My bachelor's degree took 7 years to complete, but I finished at the top of my class with a 3.97 GPA. And obviously, next was law school. So I applied to 50 of them. But 48 of them turned me down without hesitation, sending me basically the same letter saying that they didn't want my money because of my criminal record. The other two schools that gave me a chance were Georgia State University and John Marshall here in Atlanta. Well, John Marshall graciously matriculated me at the tune of $300,000, and that's how Atlanta became my home. During my first year of law school, Manny Aurora mentored me. If you've heard of him, then you understand how significant this was to my career. He helped me to secure a strategic externship with the DeKalb County District Attorney's Office during my second year. And what we were doing is hoping that the district attorney, then Robert James, vouching for me would be enough for me to clear the bar application vetting process during my third year. The title of my book, The American Dream, came from James when he realized what I had gone through to get to that point in my life. Now, after 15 years, I could finally see a glimmer of light at the end of the tunnel. The board of bar examiners would eventually certify me. And when I think about the day that I got my bar results, it sends shivers down my spine. The only thinking about the day my son Mateo was born gives me more joy than thinking about opening that letter standing in front of the mailbox. All of the pain that I endured was not in vain, though. You see, I gave my life to the Lord along my journey, and I asked him to take control. I asked him to use me to serve him where he saw fit. Now, when I look back at my life, my journey makes perfect sense. I couldn't do the work I'm doing in our communities today without the experiences that God tailor-fitted for my life. I needed to experience poverty. I needed to experience police indiscretions. I needed to experience malicious prosecutions. That all helped me hone my skills in a way that makes me extremely effective in restorative justice spaces today. One of the problems that we have within our criminal justice system is that we haven't ever regarded the input of those of us who have been on the inside. We are the ones that can fix this problem. What makes me unique is that I have been on the inside plenty of times, but I also have a legal education. God has made me a voice for the others like me. That's why Red was born. Coincidentally, that was my nickname as a gangster for obvious reasons. But now, as you heard Sonny say, it stands for Rehabilitation Enables Dreams. The combination of my personal experiences coupled with my legal education is how RED became the most effective program in restorative justice in Georgia today. RED is made up of 12 board members, which one of them is a Rotarian, our chair, Marion Bunch, as you've heard. And what we're focused on is enhancing the social, civic, and financial literacy of those individuals referred to court. We are partnered with the DeKalb County and Gwinnett County District Attorney's Office, and there is no cost for our pre-adjudication, which means that they haven't pled, they're not on probation program. After orientation, we execute a level of service intake, which affords us the ability to create an accurate profile on each of our students without triggering any of their personal trauma. The profile is then used to match the students to a mentor who remains with them at their side through to graduation. As of this last year, we are now partnered with the NFL Alumni Association to provide some of our students with retired players as their mentors. Our educational process, it begins with our GED pre-testing and tutoring. Some of our students lack a high school diploma, and getting a GED is a requisite of graduating. We instruct our participants on how to effectively assert their constitutional rights while cultivating the skill necessary for proper police-citizen encounters. We educate participants on our voting history and their voting rights, and if they're eligible, based on their criminal record, participants must secure a voter registration card before graduation. We administer emotional intelligence training, which includes anger management, controlling emotions, social awareness, and interpersonal relationship development skills. We educate on the consequences of substance abuse. We deliver finance fundamentals. We help our students open up a bank account. We provide employment readiness, which includes everything from resume writing to proper attire, to interviewing skills, to LinkedIn profiles. And we partner with a staffing agency that is geared towards matching private employers with justice-involved individuals. And finally, when they graduate, we dismiss their cases, restrict their records, and seal their file. That alone is something that has never been done before, and it has given them a clean slate. And that's why we have such a reduced recidivism rate, which is 8% for our program, 6 years sustaining. Up until 2019, Red was privately funded through my legal earning ability. And that's because I knew that I couldn't depend upon public funds, because those funds are dependent upon the philosophy of whatever administration is currently in office. Now, please don't take that as a political comment. I couldn't care less about politics. Restorative justice benefits the entire community. Progressive, liberal, it doesn't matter. Conservative, it doesn't matter. Everybody wins with this. Those charged with a crime, victims of crimes, and taxpayers funding the process can all have a better experience through restorative justice. And the reasons we didn't have much support early on was because something like Red has never been done before. We needed proof of concept for buy-in. And the data is now showing that this works. And that's why we're having some interesting partners. The lives that we're impacting in restorative justice are tempered by the pain that I endured and the hope that I have, given what I know can be overcome. My journey began in extreme poverty with overwhelming despair that resulted in a criminal record that nearly derailed my purpose. I was able to turn my life into something positive. I swore into the Florida State Bar in the same courtroom I was facing 15 years in prison. My story is an example of why investing in criminal justice reform matters, but the problem that we face as a community is that I'm still the exception and not the rule. Red is working to effectively change that, but we need help from the private sector to help us finish what we started. The history we're going to write will judge us based on how we treat others, right? So history seems like this big 30,000-foot business, and it's truly not. It's so intimate. It's bottom up. We're beginning to experience a racial reckoning. The fabric of our society is undergoing a fundamental evolution, and that is simply because so much of what has happened to date is from decades of our criminal justice system having magnified people's problems in a negative way. We've criminalized mental health. We've criminalized substance abuse, academic deficiencies. We've criminalized poverty and the results of being poor. And now that we finally realized that we got it wrong, people are asking, how do we get the toothpaste back in the tube? Well, love, compassion, intention, equality, and listening are all of the things that are going to do that. We have to move forward, making sure that no one feels that they're extraneous. We have to continuously remind each other that we're all in this together. That's why I was beyond grateful to you, Sonny, for extending this opportunity to me, because I knew that this impactful group could create change in our communities. And so I'm really looking forward to answering questions and providing any more information that could help how others would be interested in getting involved. That's my life in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody may have.
Wow. Thank you, David. That is very moving and certainly a phenomenal story. I'll pose a few questions. Most of us Rotarians in the audience are not directly affected by what you described and talking about your past and and growing up in poverty and in the criminal justice system, and how you came to be here today. Why should we all care about what you've described here?
That's a great question, Sonny. And what I want to say about that is that thinking is exactly what got us in this position in the first place, right? Trifecta. The person charged with a crime cannot be properly reintegrated if they don't have access to housing or to employment, which is the number one cause for high recidivism rates. The victims of crimes will continue to be the victims of crimes if we don't find ways to educate and reintegrate those charged with a crime. And finally, the taxpayers, probably the majority of the folks that are watching here today, it's cyclical, right? We've been investing the data. Let's talk about the data and why this affects everybody. Studies are telling us that every one of us are impacted by high recidivism rates. Georgia ranks first among all states with a correctional control rate of 5,143 per 100,000 individuals. Correctional control refers to the number of people that are in prisons, jails, youth detention centers, or on supervised probation. We here in Georgia are the epicenter of a nationwide problem. Georgia's rate of correctional control, Sonny, is 3 times higher than the second ranking state. And the main issue is that out of 10.8 million Georgians, 4.2 million have a criminal record. That's a third of our population. That means that 1 in 3 people are having a hard time getting employment and housing. High unemployment rates, which in turn leads to homelessness, affect us all, right? I mean, it's really simple to even just look at what's going on in our communities now. Everybody's saying, wow, crime is through the roof in Atlanta. Well, crime is through the roof in Atlanta because when there's a 15, 16, 17-year-old individual, just like when I was that age, that has a criminal record that can't get a job, you know what they're going to do? They're going to resort to crime because they don't have a choice. If they can get a job, these people will go work. But we have to, one of the things I always think about is how we're contributing $1.2 billion annually to the Department of Corrections. And this figure doesn't include the cost of arresting and prosecuting people. The water guys out there selling waters, they can't get a job. The kids in Buckhead that are getting in trouble for selling water, they can't get a job. But the system is pinned against them. And what I mean by that is we have maintained a recidivism rate of 30% for adults and 60% for juveniles. It's failing all of us. And what we're learning is that through restorative justice, we can create better experiences for those charged with a crime by educating and reintegrating them rather than incarcerating and perpetuating the same result. We can create better experiences for victims of crimes by having them involved in the process and regarding their input on how they want to be made whole and what they would like to see happen to the person that committed this crime against them. Lastly, and certainly not least, the taxpayers, right? We could be far more fiscally responsible with our general tax fund. It will in turn create community experiences that are better for all of us. The money could be used, the additional money could be used for education, infrastructure, roadways, and the like.
Well, thank you. That's certainly very convincing. You told us that much of the financial support for RED has come from your own pocket. However, I know you now have some financial support from other organizations. Tell us who those organizations are.
Yes, this is one of the proudest things. When we first started out, we had to convince folks that this work mattered. And then all of a sudden, Google came on board. And Google gave us marketing and advertising credits. And that has shifted things for us. In 2019, because of Google, we have had 357,000 website clicks. In 2020, we had 697,000 website clicks. Mm-hmm. And right now we're trending towards 1 million clicks on our website because of what Google has done. If you Google the word recidivism or the question, what is recidivism? RED will pop up number 3 behind Webster's Dictionary and the National Institute of Justice. So we're spreading the word. We're creating nationwide awareness. These other 3 are huge, and it's still a bit surreal to me, but the National Football League, the Arthur Blank Foundation, and the Atlanta Falcons. These are just 3 large entities that are interested in restorative justice and social justice based on some of the events that occurred in 2020. For me, to be partnered with Arthur Blank is a huge blessing because his foundation is extremely resourceful. Most of us are aware about the impact he and his network have had throughout Georgia. Well, now they're developing a youth development committee of which we are one of the organizations that are partnered with them. They're helping us with our funding of our operation. And I want to throw this disclaimer out there: just because they're helping us doesn't mean we don't need any help, because we want to spread into other jurisdictions as well. We recently had a roundtable with Mr. Blank and the Chief Judge of the Georgia Supreme Court to discuss how the private sector can help the public sector through restorative justice. And we're super excited about the opportunities ahead. I mentioned the NFL Alumni Association, also JobRise, which JobRise is just a wonderful staffing agency that employs our graduates and anybody that has a background that can be placed in an employment opportunity with a private employer interested in hiring someone with a criminal record. Then there's multiple Fortune 500 companies that are attaching themselves to us now early on, because they're realizing that these diversity, equity, and inclusion departments are necessary components of being perceived as socially responsible company today.
Wow, that's certainly evidence of a strong support, and I know that there's always other opportunity for foundations and others to support RED. How can Rotarians, how can business people support or become involved in RED?
That's one of my favorite questions, because we want the private sector to get involved. And what I mean by this is, obviously, the public sector has done its part since 2012. We've started reforming the system, creating common sense laws, record restriction, which is expungements here in Georgia. So the public sector is working hard to reverse the harm that has been created by what has happened in the last couple of decades. Now, from the private sector, specifically, first and foremost, consider hiring folks with a background. Unemployment is the number one cause of high recidivism rates. There exists several benefits for hiring people with a criminal record here in Georgia. Georgia has a negligent hiring statute for private employers to consider, which protects them against liability. There's the working opportunity tax credit, the federal bonding program. So there's tons of incentives and protections for private employers to get invested into criminal justice reform through hiring folks with a background. As I mentioned, 1 in 3 Georgians have a criminal record. Now, these are folks that are highly skilled. You look at me as an example. I manage a law firm. My name is on an appellate case, which means I've helped create legal precedent. I've give back to my community. I employ a bunch of people. But if I wanted a job as a burger fryer at Chick-fil-A, Sonny, I'll be denied employment because of my criminal record from the 1990s. That's ridiculous. And those are the kind of policies we have here in the private sector that need to change. Georgia's private sector employers, frankly speaking, have failed to respond in a way that the public sector has. The private sector has done its part. Now we need the private sector to jump in and say, hey, we're interested in hiring folks. We're interested in taking advantage of this great talent pool that historically hasn't been looked at because of that asterisk by their name. Additionally, you can become a mentor. Mentoring is the key component to our program. And I can tell you this from personal experience doing it for 6 years. Once you get a sense of the purpose behind our work and the impact it has in people's lives, you'll never not be a mentor. You'll stay on board with us for a while. And if you're interested in doing that, you can go to our website and submit an application. And lastly, partner with us. We had a couple of companies that recently partnered with us this year, and they're getting all kinds of media coverage because they're talking about restorative justice, justice-involved hiring. And we're on track to be working with a bunch of other private corporations. So partnering with us can give you access to that talent pool. And nowadays, I think it also enhances the brand, the reputation to say, hey, we're interested in hiring these folks.
David, I know that we do have some questions from the audience, but based on what you were just talking about, I want to ask you one more question. I read a presentation you made to the Kentucky Bar Association on the subject of fair chance hiring. Mm-hmm. You've alluded to the curriculum of RED. Why is it that those who go through the RED program are good prospects for hiring?
Oh, can we bring up the slide? Because I can go through what we teach them. So this is in a nutshell, obviously, but so when we go through orientation, we bring them in, we look at their criminal record, we look at the victim, we request their consent, and we tell them that there's no charge to our program, and that if they complete the 12-month requirement, that will dismiss their case. No one ever says no. And then we start the personal assessments. The personal assessments are a level of service intake that allow us to understand the individual and what specific needs they may have. Then in month 3, they're matched to a mentor. This mentor stays with them throughout the rest of the program through to graduation. And then we stay with them by starting the educational process. And that educational process starts with the civics. right? We want to teach them how to assert their constitutional rights without being combative or defensive with police officers. They need to know that police officers should go home to their families, right? That's the main goal. Their safety is important. And we want folks to be able to assert their rights without seeming as if they're a threat to the law enforcement agent. Your voice matters. They get to learn how to become voting citizens. So everybody that graduates our program is an informed citizen that understands how to vote properly. Then we go into the social literacies, the anger management, emotional intelligence, substance abuse. And these things help individuals develop their EQ. And we always explain that cognitive skills are capped at some point, but your EQ is conducive to social mobility. So we train them on the things that allow them to have better interpersonal relationship development skills. Substance abuse, we don't provide substance abuse treatment. We hope to one day, but we inform them on the need for them to focus on staying sober and remaining clean so that they can become the best version of themselves. Finance and banking. We teach the stuff that they don't teach at the compulsory education system. We basically provide the functional equivalent of an associate's degree, everything related to finance and banking, including having a bank account. Employment training. This is where they go through all the hard soft skills training that they need in order to become viable candidates. And we train our graduates on the protectives and incentives that are in existence here in Georgia so that they can have this conversation with the employer while they're going through that process of interviewing with them. So they go through all of this hard and soft skills training. And by month 11, we're starting to do employment search with them. We partner with a bunch of companies that are interested in hiring folks. And so they know they come in. The thing that makes the biggest difference with our folks, Sonny, is that when you get a candidate for employment opportunity, you have someone that comes off of the street with a resume. That's all you have. Well, here you have emotional intelligence training, you have mentoring, you have employment readiness training. These folks are great candidates because they know exactly what needs to be done to be good employers. Not only that, there's a ton of statistics that talk about how their promotion, their retention rates are the best out of any market at all, period. And we talk to the employer that when they graduate, we're going to dismiss their case, that a judge is going to sign an order saying that their record is sealed. And we know that these roundtable case studies with HR folks have resulted in outcomes saying that when people have an order saying that their record has been restricted, it lends credence to the fact that they're rehabilitated. So you're going to get all these folks that have the educational foundation, they have their record restricted to the best extent possible under the law in Georgia, and they're just great candidates because they provide the employer with tremendous incentives to be invested in this market.
Great. Wow, that's fantastic. Now, one of the questions from the audience, and this will have to be our last question, but can you comment on the current Georgia law on gang activity and so forth? Sure.
So, there's a lot to talk about there. It's essentially three elements. You first have to be charged with a predicate offense that qualifies under the criminal street gang statute, right? Then law enforcement has to validate you as a criminal street gang member. And here's what I want to say about that. Being a gang member is actually not illegal. It's just like belonging to a country club. You can be in a gang all you want. You just have to commit a predicate offense that meets the third element, which is there's a nexus between the crime committed and the organization's interest being furthered. So you have to be validated as a gang member. There has to be a predicate offense. And then there has to be a nexus that shows that the criminal street gang organization's interests were furthered by the person that committed the crime. Those are the three main elements in criminal street gangs.
Wow. Well, you have enlightened us tremendously with this, and so we're so appreciative. We're going to turn this back over to President Cannon now. I will say that I saw there's another question that asked whether there's another country or state or any place that handles these issues better than what we're doing. And I gather from what you've told me that we are not aware that there is such a thing.
That's correct. There isn't. Georgia is the leader in this. I mean, even though we have, like I mentioned, we're the epicenter because of our correctional control rate. We have done things here like ban the box, record restriction, reformation of the probation system. Georgia is leading the charge here. And that's why in the public sector, we're doing the work. Now, if we get the private sector to buy in, we're going to be they're going to write stories about the work that we've done here to enhance our communities.
Great.
David, well, great answer. And I'm glad, Sonny, we got that last question in. I mean, first of all, thank you both for such a timely and original thinking program. David, thank you for your original thought leadership here. You make a great case for both the intellectual and maybe even the emotional case for hiring, a worker who's been vetted, who has a criminal record, but for all the right reasons is a skilled employee who can serve, whatever kind of formal job. So I think it's important for our club to hear that. So thank you for making that point. One closing question. I'm not sure it's fair to ask necessarily, but just curious your thoughts. So, the current crime that we're experiencing nationally, whether it's homicides, even all the way down to petty theft, it is up, and it's certainly grabbing headlines in Atlanta. I don't want you to feel compelled to comment politically on it or anything, but just how do you view the current crime status and trends through the lens that you use to look at rehabilitation and causes of criminal activity?
Sure, that's a great question. And so I appreciate you surfacing the political stuff, because I don't do left or right. This, to me, it doesn't matter. Communities are what matter. We, the people, right? All the people. So in my mind, the reason you're seeing this spike is because we've hit the tipping point. People have been asking for help. People have been saying, please, give us better educational resources. Please give us employment access. Please give us housing. Well, you get to the point where when I was 16, 17 years old, I resorted to selling drugs, nonviolent offenses. But not everybody's going to be like me. People are going to eat when they need to eat. And that's just the bottom line. When you have the number that I talked about in Georgia, the 10.8 million Georgians and 4.2 million having a record, that is also aligned with America's record. We have 70 million people with a criminal record. It's not just Georgia. Georgia just happens to have the highest rate of correctional control, which makes it a tremendous issue. But that's why you're seeing this, because people have gotten to the point where, you know what? We're not getting the help that we've been asking for. We want jobs, we want housing. And if that's not being offered, then we have to take it. And that's the unfortunate side of this, is that people are going to have to do what they need to do to eat. And we need to do our part to help them become the best version of themselves. If we don't do our part in the private sector, this problem is going to remain. It will continue to be the same thing. Especially, last comment on that is the school to prison pipeline. I mentioned to you about how outdated the curriculum at John F. Kennedy Middle School in Dade County was for me. I mean, they're not teaching me anything. They're not helping me in any way. And so they're not helping me. I got to help myself. That this country tells you, pick yourself up by your bootstraps, but then they're going to judge you by the way you do it. I don't know if that's fair, especially given the lack of access to resource in the lower socioeconomic environment.
Well, your insights there are deep and helpful. You've made a great case for housing and employment. I mean, you start to get those things aligned, and you probably start to address the larger incentives for criminal activity. It's not that they're bad people, and through some of the work we've done as a club, I mean, you get to meet some of these people and you realize, right, I mean, they've been in a tough spot and we've trained them to kind of behave this way, or the streets have trained them to behave this way. Mm-hmm. When you pull them out of that situation and help them unwind those habits, magic can happen. So you've outlined that in a wonderful way and encouraged us to lean in as a private community. So David, thank you for your thoughts today. Very powerful. And Sonny, thank you for leading this discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you.